What's up, man? This is Robert. So this is gonna be kind of weird because I was able to get this set up so I can record the screen and the audio, and it'll actually look good instead of holding the camera in front of it. But the downside is that by getting the audio of the computer, I am actually not going to be hearing anything myself. Like, I really like it. Whoops, sorry. I think you did really well, so I think that sounds great. Like, especially just on the guitars. Like I said, they were really tight, so I really like that. So anyways, I'm just going to kind of explain and go through some stuff, and we're just going to go with it. So yeah. Sorry, a second ago I might have been talking, and I don't know if you heard or not. Sorry about that. I'm getting used to this. So anyways, so I'm going to start with the guitar. So let's see. Hey. Okay. Yeah, you still hear me, I think. Hopefully. Okay. That should be working. Okay. Sorry. I will get this. So I'm gonna start with the guitar, and I'm gonna show you what I've got set up. I've got Toneforge Menace running, and I've got it pretty much on the stock settings. I didn't really affect much, and I'm not gonna go into how to do a guitar tone because you already know that. You did that sound fine to me on that other track you sent. The main thing I'm going to show you is the EQ, and I'm going to just show you because on guitars the main EQ that I like to do is just doing a low pass filter up on the top on the right side that'll go down to around 10,000 hertz. So I'm going to show you that real quick. There we go. Okay, so I can talk still. So as you can see with this right here, it's around 10,000. It's just a little bit above. It's around, okay, 11,000, something like that. The reason I do this is because it takes out some of the high of the guitar, but mainly just the highs that are just kind of not quite necessary, but it still leaves enough for it to sound good. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to play this guitar track alone. Let me see. There we go. So I'm going to play this guitar track by itself without this EQ, and then with. And then also, just so you know, so this high pass filter down here, the only reason I have this is just to help take out some of the lows that are not needed. It can actually come up a bit more, around like 100, 120 is good for guitars, because realistically, like the lows down here, you don't need those for really anything except for kick drum and bass. Otherwise, if it's on guitar, the only lows that'll come through are just like muddy things that are just not necessary. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and play this real quick. Whoops, sorry. I'm going to play this with the EQ off and then with it on, just to let you hear the difference. So yeah. So right there, I bet you could probably hear a bit of a difference in just how that kind of took out some stuff that just was a little tingy. I don't know. And it sounds, when you first listen to it by itself, sometimes it can almost sound like it's too mid-range and like there's no highs. But trust me, when it's in the mix, it sounds a little bit better. It sounds tighter, I think, at least. Well, and I mean, Joey and other people do too. So anyway, so there's that, and that's pretty much all I have on the guitar. I mean, there's more you can do. There's some more EQing points that are good to do, but for what I've got right now, that's all, and it still sounds pretty much fine to me. And otherwise, like I said, I just have Toneforge, but it's pretty minimal, and you know how to set up a guitar tone, so yeah. So the next thing I'm going to show you is the drums. So I think I mentioned this, but for the drums, I have it set up so I have the main track where all the drums are running through, but then it's set So I have an individual track for kick, snare, toms, and cymbals. And I like doing it like this because I'm just able to individually edit each instrument and do what I need to do for that specific part instead of having to do something on the main drum bus that does something for the whole drums. Because like if I put one EQ on this track right here, it'll affect everything, and I can't do it on this track where it only affects the kick. Like it's just going to affect everything. But where I have it split up, or the reason I have it split up is so that I'm able to do individual stuff for the kick, individual stuff for the snare, and so on. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the kick. I'm going to show you what I have on it and just like the reason that some of this stuff works so well. So what I've got on the kick right now, I've got a compressor, a channel EQ, a finality advance, I've got a bit of a reverb, side widener, and then JST clip. First thing I'm going to say is this is not like a set in stone order of things that you should do. No one told me to do this. I just do it because I like how it turns out. So I'm just going to kind of turn everything off and play the kick for you for a second, let you kind of hear what it sounds like, and then I'll kind of explain what each part does. Alright, so yeah, it's pretty raw sounding, I'm sure. You know, like it doesn't really have much of a punch, doesn't sound completely EQ'd or anything like that. It sounds like a raw kick drum, which that's good, you know. It's good to have that to build off of. So the first thing I have is the compressor. The reason I put this first is because what I want to compress is the raw signal first. I don't want to compress all the stuff that I threw on after. So I start with this one, and I did this to basically just bring up the volume a little bit, and I use the ratio here. This is basically how hard the compression is. It's set to 5.4 to 1. That's pretty good. It's still kind of light compared to 30, but for this it works really well. And let's see. And then the threshold is also just kind of between the threshold and the ratio. Those two parts kind of determine how hard the compression will be. So whenever you hear people saying like that's compressed really hard, that's really overly compressed, like that's kind of what they're talking about. Like if something's overly compressed, it's got the threshold like way up and the ratio way up, and you don't want to do that necessarily because that'll just make it sound weird. So right here, how I have it, I'm going to turn it off and play it for a second, and then I'm going to play it with the compressor. Alright, so yeah, so I'm sure you could see that right there, that kind of added a little bit of volume, added a little bit of a punch, and because basically what that is doing is it's bringing up the low volume stuff up to be equal with the high volume stuff, and it's also just making things kind of come in at more of a punch than just the raw sound, if that makes any sense. So the next thing I have is an EQ. This kind of, you know, it speaks for itself, like it's just different points and things that I EQ just to kind of take out some things that are not necessary. Like these frequencies here, these are frequency areas that kind of make it sound a little bit boxy, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and play it without the EQ and then turn it on. I'll show you. So I'm sure you heard a bit of a difference there. So first off, for the kick, I've got this high pass filter down here around 44 hertz. That's a pretty good range for a kick drum, because even under that, like, you don't really even hardly hear as much as just feel that kind of stuff. But also some of it is just so low that it's just not quite necessary, and bringing it up just a little bit helps just kind of tighten it up a bit. So what I've got, let's see. So I've got this one here just to take out a little bit of the clickiness, just so it's not overly clicky, because otherwise it'll just stand out with just this high end click, and you will hardly hear like the low end stuff, and that's just not good. And then again, these just kind of take out some of the sounds that make it sound a little bit boxy that you just don't need. So I'm going to play it without just those, and then I'll add them in. You'll hear the difference. So hopefully that came through okay. So yeah, that's basically what those are for. And then The next thing I have is finality, and basically all this one does, this is a limiter, and I use this just to kind of take where I'm at and bring up the volume a bit. So I've got the volume set so it'll be no more over 0 dB, and then I've got the threshold pulled up to around, let's see, hold on a second. So it's negative 6.3. So I'm going to go ahead and play it without, and then I'm going to turn it on. You'll see it just kind of gets a little bit louder, but still stays at 0 dB or under. So yeah, so that's that, and I love finality. That's a great one. And then, like I said, here I've got a reverb. It's not doing anything major. The mix is only at 15%, but it just adds a little tiny hidden bit of width that I just really like. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that without, and then with. You probably won't hear too much of a difference, but I just like having it there. So yeah, the next thing I have is side widener, and this one, this basically just kind of widens the sound. So if you have the sound, like I love the way it kind of displays it here. It has the sound playing, and without side widener, it's usually just kind of straight. But then as you add side widener, and it gets wider, and it's just a good visual to show how it's affecting the sound. So I'm going to play it without and then with, and it's not too hard. It's at 30%. So it's not working very hard at all, but it's just doing enough that it just sounds good to me. So here's without. With. So yeah. Whoop. Sorry. So anyways, that's that. And then finally, I have JST clip, because I just like using this to bring up the volume of the whole track, because it just helps make it punch through the mix stronger. It almost like a compressor too, but it still just does a little bit different, but it just sounds really good. So I'm going to play without and then with. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and do it like this, because I just like that. So yeah, so that is how I have my kick drum going, and I'm going to show you the rest, but basically everything else is pretty much the same, because I got most of the same plugins on these other tracks, so it's not like there's anything too different going on, but I'll still kind of show you as I go. So here's the snare. As you can see here on the snare, I've got a lot of stuff. This is probably more than necessary, so I really do need to go through and probably clear it up, but I have it at a point where I really like the sound, so I've just not really messed with it. But I got an EQ, compressor, another EQ, finality. This is like another compressor of some sort that I got. It was free. It just adds a little something. I don't know. It's really light, so I probably could turn it off and you might not even really hear much of a difference, but I still like it. Then another EQ, finality again, JST clip, a reverb, and a EQ. So this is not quite a good example of truly doing some mixing, because you don't want to have, what's this, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. You don't necessarily want to have 10 different plugins on one track, because it really is kind of overkill. But I don't know, again, for my purpose, I just like how it turns out, so I've kept it. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna just turn everything off and just turn things on one at a time. I'm just going to kind of do this one quicker just so you can kind of hear it. So yeah, so there's that. And basically, let me think. So I already explained EQ, basically. Compressor, it's pretty much the same as the kick drum, The reason I have finality here and then again here is just because, everything kind of works off of each other. So like this is the first thing in the chain, and this affects the compressor. which affects the EQ under it, which affects this, which affects that, and so on. So I have this here first, just to make sure that from here to here, it won't go over 0. And then I have a couple more plugins in between the next one, and that way if these ones bring it up again, it'll keep it at 0. But then I have JST Clip kind of pushing it up a bit more, just to help give that extra push through the mix. And then I have a reverb just to give some more space, and then one last EQ just to EQ the rest of everything coming through. And as you can see, I have a really big high pass filter up to 100, and that's just because with reverb it always adds a little bit of low end that's not quite necessary, so this just kind of cuts that out. So that's the reason I've got that kind of stuff there. So the next thing I have is the toms, and this definitely does not have as many plugins. So like with the last one, I'm just going to go through and add everything in as we go, and then kind of explain it. Hold on, I've actually got to go over to here where there's some toms playing. So yeah, so that's basically the thing for toms. And for the EQ for this, because this one's kind of specific, feel free to kind of use this for your own. Like, I love the way this makes the toms sound. It brings out a little bit of the click, but not too much. It takes out some of the boxy stuff, the boxy mids that just make them sound kind of flat almost, and then adds a little bit of low end, but also cuts out some of the too low stuff, and also cuts out some of the hot stuff that's too high. And I like that. It just makes it sound like they're in like a big arena or something, which I just love, even if it's recorded. So the next, let's see. The next thing, and the last thing for drums, is the cymbals. And these ones, as you can tell, they have hardly anything, and that's good. First thing I got, simply finality, just to kind of pull up the volume, because the cymbals come in pretty quiet. And I've got one EQ. Obviously for cymbals, these are not instruments that require bass or low frequencies like really at all. Some people like putting in more low, but I don't. I think it sounds a little bit messy, so I'm going to pull it down just a tiny bit. So I have a high pass filter here at 260 hertz, so nothing under here, nothing in this area is playing, but that's good. Then I have this just to take out some of the boxiness, just like with others. This takes out a bad frequency that's right here that I'll show you later. And then this just provides a little bit more high and just to kind of make them shine some more. So I'm going to go ahead and play without anything and then bring them in. So yeah, so that is that. And one thing I wanted to show you, so the best way to find frequencies that you want to take out is you want to do what's called combing, basically. So what I'm going to do, hold on. This is going to be tough without me being able to hear, but hopefully it'll be okay. I can just kind of revert back. So what you want to do for this kind of thing is you want to basically take one of the frequency or EQ points, and you want to go up and just kind of run along, and you want to listen for frequencies that ring out just really bad, like something that just you can hear it sounds bad, it sounds annoying, it's really loud, something like that. And if you hear something like that just does not help the mix, then you can just take that out. You don't have to completely cut down. You can just cut down here. It's -8. Even that is a little much. You can do -4, -3 almost, and that would still do it. But I have it around like -6, I think. Let me see. Okay, it was at -8, and that's fine. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'm going to kind of show you, I'm going to keep it here, and then I'm going to move it up and let you hear that bad frequency I'm talking about. So yeah, I'm sure you could hear that and just how bad it sounded. And there's other cases of that, and just by taking that out, it makes it sound a lot better. Alright, and then the last main thing I'm going to show you is the bass. The bass, I hardly have anything on here. I actually have an EQ which has nothing. No, wait, that's wrong track. Sorry. There we go. I was going to say, I know I have more on my bass. So this plugin here, this is called TSE BOD Bass Overdrive, TSE Audio Bass Overdrive. This is an awesome pedal, and I love this. Or not pedal, plugin. It's free, so you can find this online. It's TSE BOD V2. You can find it for free. It'll work. It works with Logic. I'm sure it'll work with Cubase and whatever else. And this kind of just is like a good overdrive pedal simulator for bass, which just makes it sound really cool. So I'm going to turn this off. The bass I'm using is the picked bass. It's a Logic stock plugin or virtual instrument, the picked bass. So here's what it sounds like with nothing done on it. So there's that, and I'm going to go ahead just as before and add things in as we go, and then I'll explain them. So yeah, so there's that. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do it. Let me see. Well, that'll take a while. Anyways, yeah. So that's what I've got on there. So to explain these two, the reason I have two is because the first one just kind of adds in a little bit of drive, and then the second one kind of helps balance it out. I feel like if I do it all in one, then it just sounds a little messy, and it's hard to control some of the low-end stuff, whereas by having two, this one kind of helps cut out some lows, which I can then kind of add back in, but it's a bit tighter, in my opinion. And then, as before, I have channel EQ. I have this low pass filter set really low, so see it's all the way over to 4400 hertz, just over 4K. That means everything up above is being cut out, but that's okay for this because you don't need that much high end. And plus, with this overdrive and the clanginess that you're hearing, if I have this all the way up here, the clanginess will be like overpowering. And then this just takes out some of that. This takes out a little bit of boxiness. This takes out a bad harsh frequency here, and then this just kind of helps control the low so it's not too low, because there can be such a thing as too low. And then, like with others, got JST clip just running a little bit just to help push it through the mix. Got finality just to help bring the volume up but keep it at 0, and then a compressor just to help balance it out and basically just kind of make it like punch through, and not just punch through, but to make the actual sound have more of a forceful effect instead of it just sounding even and raw. So yeah, so that's really all I have. I was able to do this quicker than the last video, so that's cool. The last thing that I'm going to show you is what I have for mastering, and this is not necessarily all you have to do for mastering. There's more techniques and more things that can make it a longer process, but for what I do, it does not take that long. And like some people bounce out the song and then put the song into a separate project and do the mastering on that. I do it on here because if I do it on the output chain, it still affects everything, because everything goes through the output chain anyways. So I'm gonna go ahead and play this song without this. All I've got is an EQ, one compressor, just to kind of help make the whole mix glue together. It's especially with the drums and the punchiness of them, they help make the whole song just sound more punchy as a whole. And then I end it with finality so that everything before it doesn't make it go over 0, because this way with finality at the end I'm able to set it so it'll be at 0 dB or less and not over, and that's good, because if it's over then it'll be clipping and that's not good. So I'm gonna go ahead and play without these on, and then I'll bring them in. So yeah, that is it. So if you have any more questions, please feel free to let me know. But otherwise, this is all I got for you. I hope you enjoy, and I'll send the song along with this as well. Peace.